Ever since my parents gave me my first in 1998, I've been in love with cameras. I always get filled with inspiration every time I get a hold of a new one. The camera is a tool, and to get the job done well, you might need to pick the right one. But to create beautiful motion pictures, there is so much more than just a camera. There is glass, light, and don't forget the subject. To spend all your money on an expensive camera body might not always be the wisest. Fortunately, there are many affordable cameras out there that produces cinematic images, and we're going to compare the ones we've been using lately. The Sony A7 III, the Nikon Z6, the Blackmagic Ursa 4K, and the Sony F3.
For very scientific reasons, we use the same lens on all four cameras, the Nikon 16-35 f4, and all cameras were shot on their base ISOs. Hashtag science.
First up was the A7 III. Right off the bat you can see that the practical lights, they do not clip. Overall this camera has great dynamic range. This camera has been my workhorse for the last 2.5 years. I shot a documentary film with it, I shot a short film, and I still bring it on all my jobs. Bang for buck, this camera is excellent. Now here is the interesting one, the Nikon Z6. Sebastian usually used this camera as his main photography camera. The Nikon has more saturated colors. The skin tones are a bit more natural. It's not as yellow as the Sony. I think it looks nicer. I believe this is a very competent filmmaking tool, especially if you have some training with color grading. I think this camera is a very good video camera. Now here it gets interesting. This is the Ursa 4K, the first generation Ursa, and right off the bat it's got this really film-like texture to it. If you look at the practical light, this camera has poor dynamic range, and it's also very noisy. You have to be extremely careful when exposing this camera. This is a studio camera only. Here is the camera that was the most expensive camera when it was new, the Sony F3. This is a really old camera now, it's almost 10 years. This is the upgraded version that has S-Log and 444 out. Unfortunately, we do not have a 444 recorder, so this is just ProRes 10-bit 422. It looks pretty close to the Sony A7 III, except that the colors are better. Just better overall. Skin tones are nicer. I believe it has less dynamic range than both the Nikon Z6 and the A7 III. But this sits kind of like perfect, kind of in the middle. It has enough dynamic range to really save your highlights and shadows. Since the Sony is an HD camera only, it's a little soft when you have a wider shot compared to the other cameras. But when you move in close to someone's face, the resolution is quite good for the skin. But overall, I believe that the Blackmagic Ursa has a more film-like texture to it and a more film-like image. Thanks for watching, and if you want us to post more footage of these cameras, please let us know.